What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Site Visit. I'm Nick Schiffer with NS Builders, and we are back in our ComAv Back Bay project. I know we've talked about this patio deck a handful of times. We've talked about the pavers. We've talked about the Epay privacy wall, but I wanted to call attention to a lot of the pre-planning that really went into this design. Number one, starting with this copper head house. We have this little threshold all the way around, or this basically stop termination bar. And we were really intentional with making sure that this patio came and tucked right underneath that. But that left us with this depression here, and you can actually see some of these wires hanging out. And this right here is actually going to be additional pavers. We're going to do a curb detail, a sunken down additional paver right up underneath the door. Not something that we typically do because of snow. So those cables that I'm pointing at or grabbing here are actually heat cables. So they're actually going to melt the snow that ends up in that depression. Obviously, we have the walkable skylight, one of my favorite details in this entire project. But back here, this is gonna be the outdoor living room. We're gonna have an outdoor TV. We have a fire pit that we just got from Deco Concrete. Actually just showed up. I forgot to mention that we have a custom stainless kitchen being built up there, as well as a Kalamazoo 750 grill being built. Hopefully those lead times shrink up for us, because that has been a killer here. But that is going to go in the front here. Like I said, back here is going to be the outdoor living space, fire pit, couch, and things like that. But I had a few questions about how we were going to access all of these condensers after the fact. Well, sitting down on the ground there is actually a removable panel. We talked with the homeowner. It's an aluminum frame, so it's relatively easy to remove, but we decided that we're going to switch that up and actually add some hinges to it so you can access out here and service all of the condensers for the entire building. It's a tight space, but there is access on both sides of these units. As you can see, the electrical disconnects are on that side, and we have room, but there's also a railing that allows us to stay completely safe, so someone can work on this. So when this panel goes back in, you good? Yeah. All right. When this panel goes back in, you'll never know, it's completely continuous. This patio, the rest of this patio, it does not have heat trace, but down below we have this small patio beside our primary bedroom. I want to show you what that heat trace looks like. So inside here, we're still working through primer, through our details. Larry and Patrick are actually working on some millwork install, and out here is that patio I was talking about. So we are right outside the primary bedroom, and what this is I'm gonna call it a Juliet patio. There's probably a better name for this, but essentially we're outside. We have this tall wall that offers a lot of privacy for inside as well as when you're out here, but it gives you a little bit of additional exterior space right off the bedroom to get some fresh air if those doors are open. But let's talk about the wintertime. The wintertime in Boston is not a very nice. Specifically, I want to talk about this threshold detail. Typically, we want 7 inches from the threshold down to the patio, so if snow accumulates, we're not running the risk of it getting into this door. So we have to combat that snow, and the best way to combat that snow is never to have snow. So if we had a roof, it'd be one way, but we don't have a roof. So what we've actually done is we've installed heat cables underneath these patios, so it's a snow melt system. So when it detects snow, it's going to kick on, and it's going to keep these pavers just warm enough so the snow never accumulates. It's not like a heated floor, it's really just keeping it above freezing so snow doesn't accumulate. It's an electric system. I'll show you actually over here if I can get one of these pavers out. So you can see right here, it's similar. You have these wire loops and then these metal panels that essentially reflect the heat up. So they're designed for the paver system. Underneath this paver system, we actually have 2 roof drains that go down back into the building and down through the rainwater collection system in this brownstone. So what we've done is we've actually ran some of this heat cable down into the traps of the floor drains underneath these patio pavers to make sure that the plumbing never freezes. So when the snow melts, it goes down the plumbing and doesn't have the chance to then freeze, thus creating a problem with water building back up and then getting into a situation where we could be flooding. We're trying to be really proactive and think way ahead of all these quote unquote worst case scenarios. Next thing I want to talk about is the walls. The guys have went through, blue skinned everything, made sure the walls were completely waterproof. We originally were going to plaster outside here. We ran into a lot of different, well, I guess it would be considered exterior plaster, stucco, something like that. We ran into a lot of different termination details that we were concerned with, existing conditions that weren't really lending us to a system that we were confident that could last a really long time. So we looked into another product which is called Sembrant. It's actually basically a cement panel, a pre-manufactured cement panel. They come in a variety of colors. We've seen them a lot in commercial space. We've actually used it previously in a desk construction we did for our friends over at Everybody Fights. But here we're deciding to use it as almost an exterior cladding. So the guys have went ahead and shimmed this entire wall, well, this wall, all of these walls, to be really thoughtful and make sure that everything is nice and plumb, because you're going to have these really big panels that get adhered to the wall, and we want to make sure that not only is it plumb, but we also have nice uniform spacing. We're going to keep an 1/8 inch gap behind it, so you have drainage behind that. But when you look out the door, it's going to have this really nice, consistent, almost white plastered look. A couple of the details that you'll see in a future episode will be how we're cutting around these doors and windows, and we're not doing any notching. And what I mean by that is we're not going up and then notching the panel over. We're using the doors and the windows as our intentional lines for our reveals, but we'll see that in a future episode. So we've talked about this science experiment going on. What we were at, and this says do not enter, raw floor needs to be sealed. So if we can peek over here, I don't want to get in trouble, but just a reminder, the walls are all a Devline product. The floor is a similar product, but it has an epoxy base to it. And the reason that we've switched to an epoxy base is because it's a floor, and we almost wanted this sand cast texture, essentially this rougher texture where the walls have this really burnished, polished look. The floors, we wanted that slight grip to it, so when you're walking in there, especially with bare feet coming out of the shower, you don't slip. So it's a slightly different product. So what we're dealing with is the color variations. Van Gerven has figured it out, and the last thing we need to do is, just like this says, it needs to be sealed, and that sealer has a toner which will bring that white to an exact match to what you see on the wall. We also have the bathroom downstairs with the tub. Let's look at that one. Almost opposite to upstairs, upstairs has a floor that's slightly lighter. Down here the floor is actually slightly darker. So you can see, same thing, you have this, it's actually really cool. Right now it looks almost like a concrete cube, but looking to the future, once we get our white vanity in, our white toilet, the chrome fixtures, the space is going to really lighten up, especially, and then you have the white cabinet here. So right now it does have that really kind of dark concrete look, which is what we're going for. But once we have these other elements, I think it's really going to contrast really well and create these really awesome contrasts between materials in light and dark. And don't forget, we actually have that Cluse light that will shine that entire back wall, so we'll get some reflective. So we'll actually get some reflective light off that back wall. I was talking about the Sembrant panels upstairs on the outside. These are actually them right here, really white and clean. And then, like I said, we're going to have these small 1/8 inch gaps between each panel, and then we're going to mark and then pre-drill stainless steel screws, very similar to the Ipe wall that we did upstairs. I know you guys have been following along with all of these TrueFig. This is actually a great location to see how this came together. Everything is plastered in, everything is really nicely detailed, and this has all been straight edge. So if you put it, if I had a level kicking around, which I don't, this is completely flat. So this is basically one step away from being done. Once we install our devices, those plates are going to sit on, and we're installing this prior to paint, because these plates will be installed and we'll actually spray and roll these walls with the plates in place. So when everything is said and done, the color is exactly the same. We're going to do the same thing in the bathrooms with the plaster. The plaster will be continuous across these plates, really giving us that true flush look that we're going for with these TrueFig plates. I also want to call attention to these. This is something that I think every job site should consider. These are just from our doors, but you can get any corner guards from a cardboard manufacturer, a package supply place. But and I talk about, let me back up. I'm going to give a lot of credit to our guys over at Big Dog Painting, which we actually had some jam protectors that we started using on our jobs, and Graham had showed up on the job site one day and said, "Where'd you get those?" And he ordered a bunch of them because he was so sick of going back as the painter to touch up casing. Oftentimes stuff gets painted and then the casing is left as is, and forget banging into the side of it, dragging a cord around the outside corner. That's just going to roll that sharp corner on the baseboard over time. But on this, and further than that, we're talking about metal corner bead. So We had another job we just had the other day. We did not have our corner guards on. Unfortunately, our tile guy backed up into it and knocked the metal corner bead. And knocking a metal corner bead doesn't have a lot of plasticity to it. It's metal, it's going to dent, and denting a piece of metal means you're either cutting the whole thing out or you're scabbing in a new piece of metal corner bead and soldering it and replastering, and that's exactly what we had to do. So for short money and short time, taking some of these corner guards, putting a piece of tape on the top and bottom, protects your baseboard, protects the metal corner bead, and just is really, it's a minor thing, but you can see it's really throughout the entire space to protect this job. And I urge, a builder, a general contractor, if you're the homeowner, but even as a plasterer, because I know my plasterer didn't want to go back and have to fix that corner bead. So I was talking to him the other day saying, it wouldn't be a bad investment to just have a bunch of those in the van, and when you wrap up the job, you go around and you protect your work. But let's look out for the next guy, right? Guys, I appreciate you sticking around for this site visit. I know it's a short one. We'll be back next week. We'll see you then.